You know what I love? Comedy. Comedy does a great job of providing a form of storytelling and bringing light, humour and commentary on some of the issues that plague us in our world. These situations that are brought up are usually range from the most serious or even the most mundane. Everyone can relate to one's problems, hence they can get along with them and embrace with someone's misery, which is what makes comedy and especially self-deprecation humour so popular amongst the crowd. Self-deprecation is a popular style of humour that relies on one to devaluate or disparage themselves, often used for the purpose of humour, usually acknowledging faults within themselves to get everyone to relate to them. Whether it be what we do and how we act as people, or even how we appear physically. A lot of comics acknowledge how we tend to struggle with these things, such as talking to a girl or messing up something. It's good to every now and then acknowledge our own flaws and to satirise our own personality or features of ourselves. And with that all said, I find that there are people who would initially go out of their way to find the smallest excuses to disparage themselves just so they can put themselves out there as a class clown. There is a lot of people that do feel bad about themselves at times. They try not to be selfish and not set themselves at a high standard, so they would often just evaluate themselves. When someone discusses their own problems and shares their misery to everyone and takes the piss out of themselves, then the other wouldn't feel bad putting themselves down. Of course, comedy comes from misery, and it's fun to see others lampooning themselves in which how they behave, along with facing themselves up to more serious matters and putting themselves in those situations. But what is the difference between self-deprecation and self-awareness? Self-awareness is more about acknowledging one's own actions and feelings, most commonly referencing a component or element of a well-known thing, which is also referred to self-referential humour. I'm sure we've all seen others be self-aware all the time, and I'm sure we ourselves have fallen into this realm as well. And it usually doesn't stem off something negative, so to speak. Self-awareness, or breaking the fourth wall, can work where the joke is well written and if it's done in a subtle manner. This trope can involve something that is in a medium that does a thing satirising its own entity, most commonly done to exaggerate how much of a bad thing it is. But there are times where the self-awareness is nowhere near anything of subtlety, and the joke just falls flat by pretty much trying way too hard to be so reliant on this niche. Hey guys, we're doing the thing that we said is bad. We're making a statement on pop culture, guys. We funny, wee! I get the impression that people only do it just to prevent themselves from being self-centered and egotistical. But I'm pretty sure because of the vast amount of these kind of jokes going around, people who make these bad, ironic self-deprecation humor are the ones desperate for attention. Now, don't quote me on this, but I believe that too much self-deprecation can lower other people's expectations on you. Having that negative mentality on yourself could somewhat affect your self-esteem, and putting yourself down would also reflect how others would perceive your personality. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a bit of self-deprecation here and there, but I feel like that there could be such thing as too much of it. You know what I mean? To the point where it's just become the last resort in terms of comedy. It may be a popular form of humor, but one of my problems is that it can get annoying by the 50 billionth time. It's like, we get it, we already understand, we're not all perfect, there's no point spewing out that fact over and over again. And it is very prevalent on the internet. I see that a lot of people who create online content that usually use self-deprecation humor to reflect on their personality usually use it as a means to gain approval from the audience. The typical dude who spend their time in their bedroom talking about mediocre drama on the internet or watch Instagram videos. Whoa, I saw a cringy video today. Time to tie myself a noose. Again? To me, self-deprecation humor really works when someone is actually experiencing the things in which they're referring to with a bit of subtlety. If someone makes a joke that they're not perfect or where they're putting themselves down or something on those lines despite actually doing good for themselves, then the joke doesn't really work. If it gets to the point where you're flat out saying that you hate yourself and you're just doing it all the time and you're basically using this style just for the means of getting that need for attention, then I'm sorry, but it's not working. You really don't have to put yourself down just to get a ton of laughs. So, do I hate it when people deprecate themselves just for the sake of humor? Well, not necessarily, but it can really get grating to me. For most circumstances, I view the styles of self-deprecation humor as completely necessary, but for some I see as an act of desperation and pretty pompous. Ironic seeing how self-deprecation does not rely on one being pretentious. From people drinking bleach to the randos on your social media feeds constantly wishing to kill themselves, this is a niche that is not going anywhere anytime soon. Of course, we're not all perfect, however, you don't need to continuously bloat on about that fact the whole time. Don't put yourself down all the time just for the sake of comedy.